So, Michael, I'm pretty sure most people have heard of him. Had heard of Captain James Cook, but what exactly did he do again?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Will. Captain James Cook was one of the main European explorers who helped open up the world. He was mostly focused on the Pacific Ocean, although he basically sailed everywhere.
His story is actually quite interesting. He was the son of a poor farmer who loved education. He became a ship hand for a trade ship, but he didn't find this to be interesting, so he joined the Royal Navy. And he could work amongst professionals, and he ended up rising in the ranks too.
Yeah, he was an excellent sailor. And a few years after that, the 7 Years' War broke out between England and France in 1756, and he found himself in a couple of naval battles where he got to prove himself. He also learned the skill of being able to survey land from a ship, and that will come in handy later in life. But during this time, he was put in command of different ships that were captured as well.
So after England won the war, the Royal Society appointed James Cook to lead an expedition to the east to the Pacific Ocean to observe the rare event of planet Venus crossing in front of the sun. He was also given a secret mission to find the mysterious Terra Australia, as they claim it, for Britain.
Interesting. And so on board the HMS Endeavour, with 94 people and 18 months' provisions, Captain James Cook set off on one of 3 astounding voyages that mapped most of the unknown world at the time. Well, I think it's map time, folks. So, up here is the great land of Great Britain, and this is where James Cook began his voyage. So, voyage 1, he ended up taking the boat Endeavour, and he went down south here, and he went underneath Africa to get to Tahiti and the Pacific Ocean, because this was still like a little sketchy, I guess. And they ended up going over here along the very south end underneath Australia, which they didn't know was there at the time. And then we're going to teleport over here. And then they went to Tahiti, which is somewhere around here, and some other islands. And then after that, they sailed back over here and found New Zealand. New Zealand's apparently not on this map. So they ended up sailing all around New Zealand for a while, surveying it. It took a couple months. And then they kept going and they found Australia, which is what their goal was. So they claimed it as their own. They surveyed the entire coast. They searched this area and discovered the Great Barrier Reef. And then they took their way home. So for the second voyage, they wanted to find Terra Australis again. And explore a little bit of the Antarctic. So they went this way, and they went way south here to see a little bit of the Antarctic, which they did. And it was very cold, so they decided not to stay too long. And then they came up, and they were trying to find Australis again. And they just ended up sailing around, and they found a bunch of small islands that I can't name all of, but they did find Easter Island. That's one of the more notable ones. And they did again find Terra Australis as well. And then they decided to go this way, and they went here, and then underneath South America, and sailed back home. The third voyage was to find the secret of the North Pacific Ocean, to see if there was a place where Alaska and Asia, Russia, met, because that would be great to get across land into North America from another direction. They also wanted to just explore around some more. So he, of course, took the sail, and they went this way like usual, and they sailed underneath Australia, checked in, said hi, then they went up and sailed a bunch in circles up here in the North Pacific, and they could not find anywhere where they met. So they came down south to find some more islands, and they found Hawaii. And that is where a little incident took place.
So what happened in Hawaii?
Well, he was killed.
How did that happen?
Well, he accidentally thought through miscommunication that the Hawaiians saw him as their god, which was not true. So they all partied together for 2 weeks on Hawaii, but then Cook left.
But I thought you said he was killed.
Well, he was. What happened was, while he was sailing away, he got caught in a storm, and he ended up taking damage to his ship. So he ended up sailing back to Hawaii because he knew that the natives who observed him as a god there would be able to fix his ship for him for free.
Oh, this can't end well, can it?
Yeah, well, what happened was the Hawaiians told him no, so Cook ended up kidnapping their king. But in the process, besides, kidnapping the king, a fight broke out because one of the sailors, ended up shooting the king's nephew, who was just a boy. And so a giant battle ensued between the sailors on the beach and the Hawaiians. And in the chaos, Captain Cook was killed. However, the king, who is a very peaceful man apparently, after a little bit of bloodshed happened, told everyone to stop and to chill out. And basically, everyone went back to their places. They thought they just relaxed for a little while, and the Hawaiians found James Cook's body, and they burned it ceremonially, and they gave the ashes back to the British, told them to have a nice day, and the British left.
Well, that was nice of them, other than killing most of James Cook's crew, but...
Yeah, well, that's the tale of Captain James Cook.
So, what would happen if James Cook did not explore, and he just became a Royal Navy?
Well, one of the big reasons why he's important is because the British Empire, we always talk about how they took over Africa and India, but because of him, they and the rest of the world was able to learn about Australia and New Zealand and all of these islands in the Pacific that no one knew were exactly there before.
So he explored and discovered a plentiful of new islands and creatures that are just located in Australia, nowhere else.
Australia, New Zealand, and a lot of Pacific islands. He not only discovered them, but he also surveyed them, wrote them down, brought them back to England.
So do you think Captain James Cook should be taught in school as a little side subject, or as a full exploring, or even have his own chapter?
I think he should be mentioned, not necessarily, being taught as a whole chapter. We're not English students. If we were in England, I'm sure we would learn about Captain James Cook, of course. But we are in America. I still think he should be mentioned, though.
So, do you think Captain James Cook was a lot like Christopher Columbus, where he has all that big hooray and all that, he's seen as good, but in reality he wasn't? Or do you think he was just what the stories say?
He certainly had his flaws, but he wasn't as bad as I would say as Christopher Columbus was. He more of just tried to get along with the people, but if he thought that he had the upper hand in any negotiations, he was gonna use those as well as he could, and he basically claimed a lot of places for Britain, and that's one of the big reasons why the sun never sets in the British Empire.
So could you say that he was somewhat like a con man? Because he would somewhat have the upper hand and he would always use it? Or would you just say he was just doing his job for Britain?
It's more of saying he's using the cards that he's been given, or at least that he thinks he's been given. The king of he thought that the king of Hawaii and the Hawaiians thought that he was their god, so he was going to use that to get what he wanted.
So do you think that this is somewhat in England a zero to a hero story, because he started as a poor farmer and not that much education, to a great explorer that they probably teach almost every year?
I think you're absolutely right. I think he is one of the hero to zero stories. But keep in mind, they have a lot of them as zero to hero. They have a lot of zero to hero stories in Great Britain, like Charles Dickens and other names that I can't say off the top of my head right now. But I feel like he's definitely a lot more studied in England.
Do you think his the education that they study over in England should bring brought to America? Because I know he also helped somewhat find Canada. Do you
Mhm.
think that he they should like mention him at least, or like they should have like at least like a little side chapter like we did multiple times was like in American history with like the Cold War, the Vietnam, like just a little side chapter?
I think that the English um, should have their education than we have ours because we are primarily supposed to know mostly what we have done. Like England's supposed to know mostly what they have done. So our Cold War era, where we're in the main factor of the entire world, is the British time when they were when they owned the whole world. You know.
Okay.
So they in their education system, they most likely focus on that aspect, and this is where that would lie.
Okay. Another question: do you think he's underrated because he isn't as famous as like Charles Dickinson or some of the other explorers?
Yes, I think he is underestimated very much.
Okay. And that is the end of James Cook's speech.